entering the early modernity, right? This is contemporary of Descartes, right? Same time. Actually, he studied Descartes, and he's in many ways responding to Descartes. So that's this is also interesting to know. So Spinoza was actually part of he was part of a Jewish community that were Portuguese exiles who were fleeing the Inquisition. This is important because we'll see why that community was so strict with him. We're going to see that there were some tensions between him and that community. So in any case, he was raised by his parents to be a rabbi. He was really headed in, according to them, the right direction. He was doing great. And then his elder brother died, right? So the elder brother was in charge of the family business. So Spinoza ended up having to take over the business. He dropped out of school. And then later, of course, making it worse, his father dies when he's 21. So he's really now shoulders the whole household, right? So he drops out of, the whole rabbinic studies. He's not going to be doing that. In any case, it's clear that he never had a particular passion for it, as we can see in his writings. If you read a little bit his religious writings at the beginning, right, you have a few chapters where he's being extremely unsympathetic to the Jewish religion. And this is all, it's really, I started reading the first chapter actually, and I loved it. It was just exquisite. He's so very witty, very subtle. So if you have a kind of, how shall I put it? If you have a grudge against religion, you're in good company with Spinoza, and you will enjoy his writings in the first few chapters. So in any case, he was himself distancing himself, right, from religion. So he drops out of rabbinic school, but he starts to study with a dissident Jesuit priest, right, who in fact will shape Spinoza's mind for the next few years. And he starts to study Latin with him, and of course, all kinds of other things too, and gets very much influenced by this man. And that's where he begins to kind of develop his own heretical ideas about God, about religion, and so forth. Two main things that that you will see in his writings, and which cause a lot of problems for him with regards to his heretical ideas. They're not really heretical ideas, but at the time they were seen as heretical. Number one, he actually doesn't believe that the Bible was inspired. And in fact, he feels not only is not inspired, because for him, there's no proof of that, but it's not even an authority. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't be following some authoritative text, right? He believes actually that we have direct access to God through and we'll see how that works, right? Through our reason. We have direct access to truth. We don't need the mediation of a scripture and so forth, right? So, okay, so that's one thing which already people were like, how can you possibly say that, right? Of course, the Bible is authoritative. You're supposed to, really, take its authority seriously. And Spinoza was just like, we have no proof, number one. Number two, it's not really, we don't need it. Not only it's not true, we have no proof, but we don't need it, right? Welcome back, colors. Okay, the second idea, yeah, you want to say something?
It's very different from the Maimonides, because this whole thing was that you need to do research, you need to do all this academic stuff to get closer to God. And then Spinoza's like, I don't care, just talk to God.
Absolutely. Well, he's not talking to God either. We're going to see there's no personal God for Spinoza, right? We'll see that God is much more of a state of being, right? So he's very hard to grasp if you come from a religious background, because he's very abstract, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, how he sees God and so forth. He calls it God, but it's not at all the God of the religions, right? So that's the first one. Second point that made him really hated was the idea that there is no providential God. And in this way, he's similar to Maimonides. Maimonides also didn't think that God intervenes with miracles and, helps us with our problems. No, right? Remember, how do you get out of your problems according to Maimonides? Let's review. What does Maimonides suggest? See if you remember. And what about your mindset? Yeah, you got to expand your vessel, receive divine, someone's locked up. Receive divine light, right? Divine wisdom. Right? So it's not, God is not going to come, and intervene and, do some miracles in your life. No, you have to be open to the divine wisdom, and armed with this wisdom, you're going to be able to shift things in your life. Spinoza has a very similar view, right? It's not, God is not going to come down, from his throne and help you, right? You have to, with your own mind, create your own salvation, right? And we're going to see how that works, right? Remember, it's a class on redemption. So how are we going to redeem, save ourselves from all of the negativity that we feel on a daily basis. That's really what he's aiming for, by the way, in a nutshell, right? How many of you struggle with depression or negative thoughts or toxic emotions? Or, okay, all of you, okay, I don't believe you. Including me, right? This is the human condition, is to struggle with negative emotions and negative thoughts. And most of us, this is what is going to destroy our lives. We might have everything good. If your emotions are toxic, if you're depressed, or if you're negative, you're gonna not enjoy whatever life is giving you. So the redemption we're talking about in this particular text is redemption from yourself, right? From your own negative emotions. That's in a nutshell Spinoza. How do we elevate? What do we do? How can we navigate depression, anxiety, negative emotions, toxic emotions, right? And he's really, it's funny because I struggled with depression when I was in my 20s. And I remember, and I wish I had taken that sign, right? I was in a library studying for, I forgot what, probably something philosophy related. And I remember coming across this very book. And I had never seen someone talk about what I was feeling in philosophy, right? And I remember being incredibly intrigued, and I couldn't understand what he was saying so well, but I was like, this is it. This is what I need. I need to read this. He's talking about me, right? I was the first time I saw a philosopher talk about, anxiety, sadness, right? Fear. And I was like, oh my, this is like, wow, somebody's finally doing work on this. They're not just talking about being or truth or, epistemology or ontology. Who cares, right? So I was actually really intrigued by this guy. And somehow I read through, but then I put him down. I didn't pursue it. And now I regret, because if I had read it as deeply as I did now for you guys, I would be done with that depression at, mid-20s, because he really gives a key that is extremely interesting, that is extremely, I think, it works, right? So I'm going to share that key with you, or I'm going to share the key that he has found to deal with depression, so that you can begin to rise out of it, right? So anyways, back to, okay, where was I don't know where I was. Yes, providential God. No providential God, right? It is us. Actually, the main problem is not what's happening outside of you. It's your own emotions that are, creating a prison for you. And so the redemption here is not from, something outside of ourselves. It's not even redemption from evil. It's redemption from depression, basically, right? That's what he's going to be talking about, right? So, okay. So anyways, you can see how, the religious leaders at the time, when they're hearing scripture has no authority, there is no, God does not redeem us, there's he's not providential, we are on our own. I mean, he was just so hated, right? So they excommunicated him after a while, right? And there were several reasons why they did that. There were some political reasons too. So first of all, obviously they didn't agree with his beliefs, but this is not a Jewish thing. If you're familiar with the Jewish religion, there is room for dissent in Judaism. If you read the Talmud, which is the main work of Judaism, the rabbis never agree. There's not a single truth that is concluded. It's always open-ended. There's always disagreement. So it strikes me as strange that they would excommunicate him simply for what he's thinking. So there's a deeper reason, which is a political reason, which we need to understand. Let's remember that these were Jews who had fled the Inquisition, right? They were Portuguese Jews, that was his community, who were being persecuted in Portugal for being simply Jewish. And so they had fled, and now their only desire was to be in peace, right? And they did not want the Christian Dutch, where they were, to begin to look at them as crazy people, right? Remember, Catholicism was still very strong, and Spinoza, what he's saying is not just offensive to Jews, it's offensive to Christians, right? So they're looking at this guy, starting to get vocal, starting to develop some public, right, reach, and they're thinking, this guy's going to get us into trouble, right? They're going to, basically start to persecute us over this idiot. So they excommunicate him, so that they're like, hey, we don't know who this guy is. He's not one of us, right? So they would be left in peace by the predominantly Catholic political society at the time. So that, I think, is a true reason they excommunicate him, right? In any case, he's excommunicated now. He's 23 years old, about you guys' age, and he's completely cut off, not only from his community, but from his family. His family won't talk to him, right? So he's completely isolated. There's certainly a deep trauma there. But the beauty about Spinoza, right, is that he doesn't he never gets bitter about it. And you can see in his whole philosophy how he worked through his negative emotions, right? Certainly, Spinoza struggled with depression and anxiety and resentment and unforgiveness and bitterness. He certainly was a prey of these toxic emotions, but you can see how he works through them in this work, right? And he's giving us the key to do the same. So Spinoza, it was well known. People said about him, we have record of this, that he was somebody who lived a very peaceful life and who was very, very joyful, right? He never let these things get to him. And so what I want to know is how he did it, right? So that's very interesting, right? He never let these things get to him. He just continued to live a very quiet, secluded life where he simply wrote, right? And he made a living as a lens maker. Yeah, he actually worked in cooperation with some scientists in making telescopes and microscopes and, the lens for those things. So he was kind of doing making the lens, polishing them, crushing them, whatever. So he was doing some work like that, but he never really had a university position. In fact, he was offered one very prestigious university position in the German University of Heidelberg, which is very, very famous even today. And he turned it down. Why? Well, I don't know. He said, if I can continue to think freely in a structure, right? As soon as I'm in a system, they're going to ask of me to think in a Protestant way, in a Catholic way, I don't know. And I cannot let this system limit my thinking. My task is to think, right? And so he turned it down, stayed very humble, doing this very humble profession, and just wrote all his works until he was around 44. He worked like this, and then he caught pneumonia, something like that, related also to the lens that he was crushing, to the powder, and he died very young, right? But thankfully, he left us a key that I think will give us really the path to how he was able to deal with these hostile forces in his life and not let them influence him and destroy him on the inside. So that's for Spinoza. I hope you like him at least as a person. If you struggle with his work, you can at least like the person of Spinoza. All right, so let's get any questions on the life of Spinoza before I get into the text. Okay. All right, so let me let's go back to the beginning, what he's trying to do. A few of you were asking that when you read the text. We're like, what is he trying to do? Who is he speaking to, right? Mainly, like I said, right, the main purpose of this work is to look into our negative emotions, because that is what, according to Spinoza, is going to destroy us. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you that destroys you. Like, let me say that again. This is very wise advice, right? It's never what happens to you that destroys you. Anything can happen to you. It's how you react to it that becomes damaging. Do you react in a resentful, hateful way? And do you become colder? Do you become harder? If you are doing this, you are actually creating damage in yourself. If, however, you respond to it with patience, with humility, even love, right? You are actually not going to become damaged by that which happened to you, right? And in a way, anything can happen to us. If we react in the right way, that thing can actually become a factor of growth, of maturity, right? It doesn't have to crush us. So he's really going to tell us, right? One of the things he's going to teach us is how do we process these negative emotions, right? And so first, what he's going to do is going to, first of all, what are emotions, right? We're going to look at that for a bit. And then he's going to look at two types of emotions, because we all know that we have two types of emotions. We have positive emotions and negative emotions, right? He's going to look at those and try to give us a key how to increase positive emotions and, kind of navigate negative emotions. And then we're going to see, and this is key, that our mastery of our emotions has to do with knowledge. We're going to talk about that. Okay, Mirza, you have a question? You're good? Okay, you just look alert. Okay, good. All right, so first of all, what's interesting about Spinoza and where he's very different from his contemporaries is that for him, emotions are not a bad thing. Most of the people in his time, right? Yeah.
Does he teach it bottom up?
Does what?
What do we do with
Well, wait, I'm going to get there. this is where I'm going, but I'm going slowly, right? First of all, he's going to teach emotions are not bad. And this is not, by the way, what religion had been teaching, right? Religion has been teaching for centuries that our emotions are bad. We have to control them. We have to crush them. We have to repress them, right? We have to, all emotions are not only bad, but they're lying to us, right? We cannot trust our heart when it comes to making the right decision, right? We have to trust only our mind, and emotions need to be constantly controlled. So you're sad, control it. You're greedy, control it. You're lustful, control it. You're, angry, control it. We are not allowed, and this is still true today, right? You go to a church, synagogue, a mosque, you're not allowed to go and be depressed. People will be like, where's your faith, brother? Right? Why you not? You shouldn't be sorrowful. You should be happy. Put on your smile, right? Everybody wearing fake Christian smiles or Jewish smiles or Muslim smiles. I don't know, right? But we are kind of under pressure in the religious context to not show our negative emotions because that is perceived as a lack of faith, right? As a lack of trust in God. So sadness is, we cannot be sad. Angry, we cannot be angry, right? If you're angry, now you're sinning. Right? And we forget that most of the main leaders of the three religions were very angry people. I mean, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, very angry people, the three of them, right? So they certainly were expressing their anger. So we tend to say, oh no, anger is not good. So we tend to take these emotions and we're like, no, not good. Even joy, right? We don't like. Oh, you're enjoying yourself? Well, that's because you don't know that hell is waiting for you at the end of this enjoyment, right? So even joy, we have decided, is bad, right? We're like, oh no, you can't enjoy yourself in this life because that means you're too attached to the world. You should rise above the world. So here we are not destroying every emotion, even the good ones, right? And so Spinoza is going to say, I'm not going to do that, right? Emotions is part of who we are as human beings, and I'm going to explore them as worthy of exploration. And this is very new. Because now going to philosophy. In philosophy, nobody cares about the emotions. All they care about is the mind, reason, and they say basically what makes you human is your mind, your reason, your emotions. That's what makes you animalistic. That's how philosophy has defined emotions. So you see the two biggest enemies of emotion is religion and philosophy. Religion because it says emotion is bad, all positive and negative, and philosophy because they don't bother to think about the emotions, because emotions, that's the animalistic part. It's our reason that makes us truly human and above, the animals. And so they explore reason at length, but they completely despise and neglect the emotions. Spinoza is going to say, no, emotions is part of what being human, and I'm going to explore those emotions, and then we're going to see how we can better navigate them, right? Yes,
Romeo. I think that's so interesting because literally, I was writing the Maimonides, the last part of it, and I was going over my notes and how he literally says that it comes from the mind, that religion, faith, and the light comes from the mind. The wisdom usually, and I would talk about how it's usually from the heart in certain religions. So I just find it so interesting and like almost contradictory that in modern religion or in religion of this time, they didn't like emotions because it came from the heart, and we should use our head to make rational decisions. But it's also like faith comes from the heart and not the head. So it's like, which one is it?
Okay, so good. Except that faith, emotions don't come from the heart; they come from the body. We're going to see, right? So the heart is another entity, and faith usually, I think, in most at the time, is a rational thing, right? Remember Maimonides? I'm close to God when I'm, my vessel is wide, and and so forth. So most people at the time were arguing why God exists, why we should follow God, and so forth. So it was still very rationalistic. Just a few fringe people like Rumi, right, were talking about the heart. Most people was all about the mind. So he's really doing something cutting edge by sinking back into the body, right? Okay, so first thing we need to know, our emotions have to do, make sure you write this down, with the way that we are dwelling in the world, physically, with our bodies. Our emotions have to do with the way that we are dwelling in the world. So our emotions have to do with our being in the world. So there will be two kinds of emotions based on two ways that we dwell in the world, two ways that we are experiencing life. Right? Emotions have to do with the way that your body, yourself is experiencing life. So first of all, first way that we're experiencing life is we're powerless, right? You want to date that person, they don't even know you exist. How are you going to feel? Sad, right? You want to, ace that class, but you're like, oh, man, I hate the teacher. I can't bring myself to study. sad, angry, right? You want, to have this job, but somebody gets it before you, powerless, sad, right? So first way that a lot of us, that we all have an experience, is we dwell in the world in a state of powerlessness. We are missing, we don't get to date this person. We can't do well in this subject. We don't get that job. Our parents are abusing us and we cannot control them, right? Our friends are making fun of bullying us and we cannot, right? Most of us, right, have experienced this powerlessness, and out of the powerlessness comes the negative emotions of anger, and of sadness, right? Sorrow is how Spinoza defines this sense of powerlessness. In fact, there are two main emotions for Spinoza, and everything is a derivative: joy and sorrow. If you understand joy and sorrow, everything is a variation on joy and sorrow, right? As you can see in the descriptions, right? So sorrow is predominant emotion all of us are feeling, because all of us, to a certain degree, are powerless in the world. Make sense? Everyone good on that first one? So if you're sad, look no further than the fact that you feel powerless about something. Boom, you're going to be sad. Right? Great definition. Right? Now, joy is the opposite. It's you feel like you're empowered. For example, you do well on a test. I aced it. I got this. I control this subject matter. Joy, right? Or you succeed in, dating that person. They say yes. Ooh, I did it. Now you're feeling empowered. Like, I got this. I got this person. I was able to seduce them, right? Or you get the job. You're like, I got the job. I control it, right? Or you do well, or you perform a task well. Again, you feel empowered. Boom, you're gonna feel joy. So anytime we feel joy is when we feel, I got power of this. I feel empowered, right? These are the two main emotions and the two main states of being that you're going to feel. All the rest is a variation, and you can read about it. I'm not going to talk about it because they're interesting, but we really need to know how to juggle these two states, right? Okay, so far so good. Any questions with joy, sadness, power, full powerlessness, power, empowerment, powerlessness? Are you good with that? Are you following? Everybody agrees? Okay. Okay, so then just for some vocabulary, right? So you can interchange in the text emotion and passion, by the way, they're synonymous. Okay, when he talks about passions, it's the same thing as emotions, right? So he's going to say there are two types of emotions based on these two states of being. We know joy and sadness, but especially he talks about emotions that are actions and emotions that are, let me make sure I have this. Passions. Okay, sorry, I made a mistake. He doesn't interchange emotion and passion. He just says there are two types of emotions. Let me go back, right? Actions. So these are emotions that you feel like you're in control. This is joy. And then there are emotions where you feel you've lost control. These are called passions. And these are the sorrowful emotions. Good with that? Yes. Two types of emotions: actions, passions. Okay, so this is not actions in the sense of something I did, right? This is a type of emotion he calls action. And this is the type of emotion that comes when you are empowered to do something. I can do this. I got the girl. I got the car. I got the job. I got the grade. And these are all emotions of joy. And these are called actions. These are active emotions. Good with that definition? Okay, and then you have the emotions that come from a feeling of disempowerment. You're powerless. You lost the job, you lost the girl, you lost the car, you lost right, you lost somebody's respect, and now you're sad. That type of emotion is called a passion. Okay, and of course there are whole derivatives of that, right? Or along with sorrow, you have anger, you have humility, you have pity, you have all of these are the same variation on the same theme. Okay, all right, so we got a few definitions. Last definition, and this is where it gets very, very interesting. This is where he's starting to give us the key. According to Spinoza, the reason, so now going to the negative emotions, right? The reason we feel disempowered or powerless in the world is not that we necessarily are powerless. Okay, let me say that again. Actually, let me first give a further definition. Going back to the emotions of dwelling in the world, right? This is what's very interesting about emotions that really helped me actually with thinking through this in my own life. If emotions are just have to do with the way your body is connecting with the world, right? then you never have a true knowledge of reality. Let me explain, right? You only have a knowledge of how that reality makes you feel. This is so important. Let me say it again, right? Because emotions have to do with how your body is reacting to what's happening in the world, right? Then we never have a direct knowledge of that thing. We only know how that thing makes us feel, right? So our knowledge of the world is always mediated by the body. Let me say that again. Our knowledge of the world is always mediated by the body. We can never know the things themselves. We are always going to be knowing how they make us feel, and that's it. I'll give you an example. Does anyone need me to repeat that sentence? Yes, Mirza. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we know that our emotions have to do with the way that we are connecting physically to what's happening around us, right? So that means that we never have a direct knowledge of that thing. We only know how that thing makes us feel. Okay, I'll give you an example right now. This is a great example. How many of you dated someone and they remind you of someone and now you're super pissed at them? Okay, right? So you, maybe this is a bad example because it has to do with the mind. I want to stick to the body. Let's imagine you meet a person and this is great. This is a good one. I used to have this problem. So I was dating someone once that would come 3 hours late to our appointments. 3 hours late, straight up, like no apology, nothing, like it was normal. After a while, I was like, okay, like it's a thing with this guy. So I started to accept that we were in 2 different time zones. So I acted very well according to Spinoza, right? I started to, understand his nature. I won't tell you where he was from. So going to a very shaky direction, right? But he just had a different time process of time than I did, right? My initial reaction was to be pissed, like, how dare you disrespect me? You're coming late. What the hell, right? So I was now reacting directly to what he did. I was seeing him as the one who is disrespecting me. So now I'm not sensing who he really is. I'm sensing how he makes me feel. Do you follow? Right? I'm like, what a disrespectful jerk. Was he necessarily disrespectful? You'll find out, maybe not, right? But for now, I'm seeing in my body your disrespect. I feel annoyed right now that you're not on time. You are disrespecting me. You are a disrespectful person. I'm going to cut you out of my life. This is what I'm going through. I never even talked to this guy yet. I'm already decided he's a disrespectful person. I need to cut him out of my life and so forth, right? Now, let's imagine that person somehow got stuck in traffic, right? Which was often the case with this guy. And so he got stuck in traffic. It's not at all that he disrespects me. The true knowledge, right, is that he was stuck in traffic. He was actually trying to make it on time. And now that I have true knowledge, I realize, oh, I'm a little less pissed. Does that make sense? Okay, do you see how the first version, he's late, and now I'm just feeling angry without knowing truly what's happening, right? I just know how he makes me feel, right? This, he says, Spinoza, this is always the case with every type of situation in the world. We're always just gonna know how they make us feel. And it might have nothing to do with who they truly are. Are you following? So this goes with people and situations. You're in a situation where you lost your job. All you know is how it makes you feel. You don't know, maybe there's a higher purpose why you lost the job. There's a better job waiting for you. You don't know that. Right now, your body's like, I'm in pain. I hate this. This is horrible, right? I just know how this made me feel. So in the immediacy of our lives, all we know is how that thing makes us feel. It takes a little more thinking, right? Your thinking has to kick in, searching for the true knowledge to reach a higher state where, for example, with the person, oh, you were stuck in traffic. Now I have better knowledge of what happened. I know you, not just how you make me feel. And at that point, I feel immediately more joyful because now I understand and my mind is empowered. I see what's happening. I understand. My mind is empowered and now I feel joy. Even the person is late. Suppose he texts me and tells me I'm stuck in traffic. Immediately my anger goes away, right? Because I have a better knowledge of the situation that has been given me. Are you following me on that? Yeah, Nor.
So I just have a question. Is Spinoza's point to be able to control your emotions, or is it just wait until you have all the information to have an outburst.
That's it. No, not an outburst. You don't control emotions. You get better knowledge of what is going on. Once you have better, true, adequate knowledge of what is going on, you're going to feel empowered. Ooh, I get what's happening. And now, because you feel empowered, how do you feel in terms of emotion? Happy. So even the person's late, you're happy. That's the key. You follow? Are you seeing the secret? Even everything going badly, you understand what's going on. Boom, you're going to be happy even though everything's going bad. That's in a nutshell Spinoza. Everybody understood? That's really, if you got that, you got everything. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it really boils down to understanding, but also communication, especially like in the relationship example you gave, that, even if I'm, going through a bad patch and I'm being kind of nasty to my boyfriend for whatever reason, if I communicate, hey, I'm going through something right now, maybe, just don't, you might get on my nerves really easily. It's not you. I'm just frustrated with this thing. It creates that understanding,
exactly.
That communication.
Exactly. So that's the key. So what Spinoza is saying is we are freed by our knowledge of the situation, and we should always seek to get a higher knowledge than just the reactive knowledge that we have, right? We have a reactive knowledge. I hate this. And if you get stuck on that level, you're going to be unhappy all your time, all your life, right? You need to start thinking, why is this person acting this way? Or why is this situation in my life? And now you're starting to become more active with your mind and therefore happy. Even though the situation is still messed up, you have a deep understanding of it. And therefore now you are happy. I went ahead of myself. I didn't want to talk about that till next time. That sucks. Okay, yes, Nora.
So question, what happens if, that guy tells you that, well, I'm just in traffic, and you're like, bullshit, it's been 3 hours, and you're still mad. Well, what do you do then?
Well, you have to make sure, you have to continue pursuing the knowledge, right? Was he or not in traffic? Now, suppose he's lying. That's where you're getting, right?
Well, no, even if he wasn't, I feel like if I had to wait 3 hours for a date, regardless of the reason, he could have given birth. I don't care. 3 hours.
But why aren't you?
3 hours, 3 hour traffic, I wouldn't do that.
Okay, so there's that.
Even if it was believable, say you went to the hospital and missed their date. I don't know. I feel like I'd still be angry. I got dressed. I went out.
But are you still angry at him though? So personally, are you still thinking he's disrespecting you? You see, so you're still frustrated and disappointed. Huh?
Isn't it still negative emotion?
Yes, and so you bring me to the second part, which you guys are making me speed up. There's a second one which has to do with not the body, but the expectations of the mind. That is also a cause of deep suffering. And we're going to talk about that. So yours is more of an expectation. I expected to have this date, and now it's not happening according to my mind. I am disempowered, sorrow, right? And now you got to find a way, and we're going to talk about that too. Those are the two ways, right? We're going to talk about that. Yes.
I was going to comment on it. So I was also thinking that where I was like, there's been situations where I've tried to, say like, my true intention is this, but it didn't come out that way. Because a lot of times, even if you say you have that understanding of, well, this is what I was actually doing, what if they don't believe you? What if they, your actions?
So go back to that.
Like that.
Let's go to Mirza. No, so
I think I while I was thinking that, I also kind of came to the solution where, in her extent, we're like, oh, you're 3 hours late. How would I believe you? Well, it's up to that person as well. If they know that they're going to be late, or if they are just, seeing like, or just even just a, hey, I'm on my way. Hey, got into traffic. Hey, don't think I'm going to make it. Hey, let me know if you want to cancel. It's that constant communication, that constant understanding needs to be reached in order for that other person to not get frustrated. Because if you already know he's not going to make it, you're like bummed out, but you're not frustrated. You're like, okay,
exactly.
We'll do another day. I hope you're okay.
Very good. So the communication is a search for knowledge, right? Very often, one of the main problems in dating relationships is lack of knowledge. You interpret everything they're doing based on how you feel, number one, and number two, your expectations, which we're going to talk about. And then you're constantly miserable, right? One of the keys is we're going to talk about this, get true information, what's going on beyond what you feel, right? And of course, deal with the expectations, which we're going to talk about. So now, what if the guy is lying? This is a good point. Then you would need to go deeper. Why are you lying? What made you like that? Right? What happened to you? I had a friend, she's so funny. She was on the bus. You know how you meet craziest people in the city. There was some guy, completely dysfunctional. She was like, in her mind, right? She's like, what happened to you? She was being sarcastic, but this is a genuine question. Can you begin to ask, why are you acting like this? Why do you feel like you have to lie to me? When did you start lying, right? And now you're getting deeper and deeper knowledge. Your mind is more and more active. And the more knowledge you get, the more empowered you are with the situation. You're less the victim of whatever this guy is doing. It's not random anymore. You get it. And now, even though that person is dysfunctional in your life, intimate with you, you're happy. Do you follow? Because you understand. You have this knowledge. You have made the effort to get to the reason, the root problem. Does that make sense a little bit? Good. So you're starting to get it, right? We'll come back, of course. We'll go into more detail because right now I just want to talk about the definitions, right? But that's the first thing, right? So first thing we get is what Spinoza calls knowledge of the first kind. This is the immediate knowledge of your body, how your body immediately reacts to a situation, how you feel about it. Nothing to do with who that person is, what that situation is. It's just, this is how I feel. And that's what Spinoza calls the first type of knowledge, the knowledge of experience, and is the lowest type of knowledge, right? Because you don't even know the thing. You just know how the thing makes you feel. Are you with me? Let me say it again. So this is knowledge of the first kind. So if you read about it, that's this. Is a knowledge of your experience of the thing, is the knowledge of how the thing is affecting you. And it's not at all knowledge of how the thing is, right? You don't know, you have no clue. You just know how it's affecting you. It's very low level, right? And of course, because now you're affected by this person's behavior, you're going through the lateness of that person, you're kind of passively undergoing their lateness, you're sad and angry and so forth, right? So of course, we know the key, of course, will have to be to gain adequate knowledge, what he calls adequate knowledge of the situation, right? So for Spinoza right now, when you're just in your body, feeling how that person makes you feel, you are prey to inadequate knowledge. Let me spell it. Inadequate. Inadequate knowledge, right? And so the key, of course, there will have to be to develop adequate knowledge of the situation, right? Or of the person. By the way, this is the same for the situations in our lives, right? We can look at it in the same way. You lost your job. How do you feel? Some of you feel really happy. It depends on the job, right? Suppose it was a great job. That was your career. You lose it. You feel, of course, happened without your control. How do you feel? You're not in control. You lost something you didn't want to lose. What's the feeling? Dominant feeling? Just sorrow. Remember, just two main emotions. And the rest is variations, right? So you sorrow, you're sad, you're all, and so now again, you only know how the situation made you feel. Let's remember that. You don't know anything about the situation in itself, whether it's good or bad. You see what I mean? For that, you would need to get a deeper knowledge as to how that situation might actually be interpreted differently than just, right? A moment of horrible despair, right? And so we have to also actively begin to interpret what is happening to us and gain adequate knowledge of that to begin to be also empowered with regards to not only people, but situations. Are you following me? Yeah.
So I have a question. I feel like there's like a gap here where like, what about things that you have no control of, and even when you get the answers, they're shitty. Like, what about that?
Everything.
If I get fired from my job, right, and I find out that it was just because my boss hated me.
Good.
Nothing I did.
No, that's very good. That's very good. Because everything for Spinoza, you can gain power over in your mind. So now you know your boss hated you. Now you can ask yourself, why this boss hates me? You have two options. Something you did, which you can then grow from, or you gain deeper knowledge in your boss, i.e. in human nature. Now you're empowered again.
How do you feel satisfied with just knowing more about your boss? And well, I guess I don't have an income, but at least I know he's a bad person.
You have regained power over the situation in that way. So necessarily some joy will arise, right? Even you're struggling inside of you, you'll be like, I mean, this happened to me. I lost my job like 10 years, 20, I don't know how many years ago. My first job, right? Teaching. I lost it. And I was like, but in my, so of course bitterness, resentment, whatever, hate, right, obviously towards because it was deeply unfair, blah blah blah, of course, right? So but then I start to think, why I lost this job. Then I start to see some mistakes I made, right? Okay, then I start to see, okay, this boss is a moron too, right? And I start to have deeper insight in human nature. I'm not naive anymore. I lost the job, but I start to feel empowered because I understand how I can grow and I understand more about human nature. I'm wiser now. I know how to deal with bosses next time, right? I know some people won't take that behavior that I did, which, right? So I've even though I had lost the job, I was at peace because I had processed it very quickly. I processed the situation into what I can learn, period, about the boss, about me, and what can I learn. Once I gathered what I could learn, I was like, moving on, right? So even, right, anything happens, there's always, always, always something you can learn, even that boss. There's something you can learn about avoiding people like that, right? Something you can learn about navigating people like that, right? So the main, it's always knowledge. That's the thing with Spinoza. It's always knowledge. If you're sorrowful, you still don't have adequate knowledge of the situation. And you have to continue asking yourself, what can I learn? What can I learn? What can I learn? Once you get that knowledge, no matter what is going on, you're going to feel a deep peace and serenity and joy, right? Are you following me? Yes.
I want to piggyback on that because I've also had struggle with that with like things that are out of your control. Because sometimes I am not in the sense of like I want to control everything, but in the sense of like I don't like being powerless essentially. But I've also found that even if you do lose your job and you don't even know why, like even if you can't figure out why you were fired, you know, maybe you don't even know. Sometimes they don't even tell you. They're just like, you're done. You know, or maybe it's just, I don't know, they were laying people off because they needed money, whatever. And there's something that you did. It's just that's just what the company did, you know? So in situations like that, and in any situation, I feel like sometimes it gives you more power to actually accept that you don't have control in that situation.
That's the book of Ecclesiastes. That's right. Remember, we studied the opposite, right? Accept that you don't have power, right? That was the first book we did, right? And that's a great approach.
I think that's powerful in itself.
Oh, I agree with you. That's not what he's saying, right? He's proposing a different path of empowerment. But remember, yes, Ecclesiastes did say, learn that nothing is in your control, and once you do, you will be right on the path to grace or whatever, right? So that's a great approach. It works. It's a world in itself. You can totally survive with that approach. This is a different world I'm proposing, right? Spinoza, which is pure power, empowerment, right? I can still regain power over the situation by understanding what is going on. Yeah.
I want to relate to this, and so in Islam, right? There's there's a saying that in every bad thing that happens to you, there's always good.
That's it.
There's always good that you don't see it,
yeah,
or you just didn't know it was gonna happen.
That's it, exactly.
Like I'll give you an example. My dad told me the story like 2 days ago, I think. It was about a man in Saudi. He owned a restaurant for like the imams. The imams, they would gather up in this restaurant and they would stay there and live there and maybe eat and stuff. And the way that man would manage the whole hotel and restaurant is that he bought it off of the owner. Like he would pay the owner this much every month, and that way he gets to keep the hotel and the restaurant and make profit for himself. And he was having a good life. He did this for years and years, like 20 years maybe, and he was it was amazing. But recently what happened was this other person came to the owner of the hotel and stuff, and he said, I will give you double the money if you get, and I'll give you double the money he gives if you can make a deal. And so the owner was, all right, we have a deal. And so with that, as soon as they made that deal, the original the person who originally rented the whole hotel and everything, he lost his job and everything, and he was depressed. He was like, everything I had, it's gone. Now he has to go back to his other country because in Saudi there's no citizenship or anything like that.
Right.
So now he has to go, and he was a Bengali, so he had to go back to Bangladesh and everything now, leaving all his fortune that he made over there, all the money he made over there, he had to leave everything. So, he was sad at a certain point, but what happened is after he left Saudi, shortly after that, COVID happened.
Oh, okay.
And so as soon as COVID happened, there's no way he could have managed the hotel anyways.
Got it.
If COVID, during COVID times. So after that, he realized how in every bad thing, there's always something good.
This is a good example, but not quite what Spinoza is saying, but it's in that direction. Spinoza is not saying that your life somehow is going to bring you some good out of this, right? Because Spinoza believes you can stay in this wretched state and be happy. He's talking about he would know something right? So for example, just imagine the person who lost his restaurant, right? At the moment where he's lost the restaurant, where he's sad, he could have told himself, there's always good somewhere, and there's always a reason, right, that this happened. Then he would be happy at that moment before even getting the COVID issue and so forth. So this is the ability to be happy in the dark moment, not just when the good thing happens, right? And so I appreciate the connection with Islam, because remember, in Islam, we know this from Maimonides, right? Everything that happens is from God. Remember, Maimonides didn't agree with that, right? But in Islam, so everything that happens is from God. Therefore, there's always a good reason why it's happening, right? This is actually kind of similar, because remember, for Spinoza, everything is in God, right? He doesn't have a personal God, but for him, right, God is the source of all events, all situations, all beings, and all things, right? And so in as much as everything lies in God, then necessarily everything has a purpose, right? And the key is to gain knowledge of that purpose. That's the idea, right? Okay, so let's go to a few references, and then we'll talk next time about the your mind, the way your mind and your expectations destroy your life, right? Today we talked about the way your body destroys your life. So turn with me. I'm going to give you a few quotes in connection to what we talked about. So you have the quotes. Let's go to page 74. So this chapter is very, very important. You have all the definitions, and then you have all of the explanations of the derivative emotions, if you're interested, right? You have, of course, joy, sorrow, the main ones, and then you have all the variations: astonishment, love, hatred, devotion, etc. Right? Okay, so go to the bottom at the definitions on page 74. Everybody with me? Who's with me? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. So we have here a few words that we talked about, right? I call that an adequate cause, whose effect can be clearly and distinctly perceived by means of the cause. In other words, this is adequate knowledge, right? This is knowledge where I am in control. I have figured it out. It's knowledge that is of the thing, not of how the thing is hitting me. Okay, let me say that again, right? The adequate here is, it says clearly and distinctly perceived, meaning the adequate knowledge is the knowledge of the thing, is a true knowledge. It's not the knowledge of how the thing makes me feel, which is a bad kind of knowledge. Are you good with adequate? Yes, then inadequate, of course, partial cause, whose effect cannot be understood by means of the cause. This is the knowledge first, right? We talked about the first knowledge of the first kind of the body. I just have how the thing hits me, but I know nothing of the thing in itself. That's why he calls it partial. I just have how it hits me. I don't know what the real thing is. So I have incomplete knowledge, right? Inadequate means simply incomplete knowledge. I just know how it makes me feel, but I don't know who you really are. I don't know why this situation really is in my life. I just know how it makes me feel right now. That's incomplete or inadequate knowledge. Everybody with me with the definitions? Then we have act and suffer, right? Act is he says this: when anything either within us or without us of which we are the adequate cause. So to act is I'm in power, I have control over it. And then he talks about later, last line, we suffer when anything is done within us or follows from our own nature, where we are not the cause. I am enduring it, I am suffering it, right? Now here's the key with emotion. It's what we talked about, that emotions have to do with our dwelling in the world, right? Emotions, I understand the modifications of the body by which the power of acting of the body is increased, diminished, helped, hindered, and so forth. So let me explain that, right? Emotion is the modifications of your body. So for example, you lose your job. Now you have no power. That's a modification of your body. Your body cannot go and strangle the boss who fired you, right? It cannot make the thing happen. So your body now is hindered. Your body strength is decreased. You cannot go to work. You cannot even strangle the boss, right? So at that moment, he says, right, my body is diminished, right? It's hindered. And it's a modification of my body. You see how you lose your job? Your body is modified. I lose my power. And now, boom, my body is modified. I feel sorrow. Modified, I lose my power. I feel sorrow. Right? So an emotion has to do with your body, losing or gaining power. Make sense? Are we good? Yes? Okay. And then he says, And then, of course, suppose you get the job you wanted, it's also a modification of your body, right? Your body's not, yes, I got this, I made this happen, I went to the interview, now I can work. You're going to be in full activity. Your body is modified in an active way, and now you feel joy. Everybody with me with the modification of the body, right? And then finally, we can, I'm on page 75, the top. Therefore, we can be the adequate cause of any of these modifications. I understand the emotion to be an action. Otherwise, it is a passion, right? Remember, action, active emotions is when your body's like, I'm in control. Passive emotions or passions is your body lost control. You lost the job. You lost the boyfriend. You lost the car, whatever. Okay. Now, last quotes that I have to give you. Give me 1 minute. This has to do, this is on page 81, actually. And thank you, Zhang, because I was looking for that quote and I couldn't find it. And then I saw it in your reading assignment. So there's a God. Okay. So go to the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph. This is where it's going to tell you that the knowledge of the body is inadequate and why. Okay. You see the word explanation? Raise your hand if you're there. Explanation. This is 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph. Okay. So I'm going to read that. I say in the first place that an emotion or passion of the mind is a confused idea. You get that, right? Passion, not a real knowledge. You don't have true knowledge, and so that's why you're so disempowered. Continuing. We have shown that the mind suffers only insofar as it has inadequate or confused ideas, right? You suffer because you don't have true knowledge of the situation. Good so far? Okay, continuing. I say again, by which the mind affirms of its body or any part of it a greater or less power of existence than before. Now, here's the sentence you underline. For all ideas which we possess of bodies indicate the actual constitution of our body rather than the nature of the external body. Translation. What he's saying here is whatever your body is feeling, it's only the knowledge of how that thing makes you feel, but it's not the knowledge of that thing, right? He says this. It indicates a constitution of the body, how your body feels, rather than the nature of the external body, of the thing, right? So any knowledge you have, which is mediated by the body, which is an emotion, is going to be incomplete. You just know how that thing makes you feel, but you don't know that thing. Are we good? That's where we are. Okay, so we're going to continue with our empowerment process next time on Zoom. Let me cut the recording.